Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 817, 817, June the 21st, 2019, Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, before I get into some of the news of the day, just wanted to mention this. I'm watching John Solomon's report with Lou Dobbs the other night, and he basically says, in no uncertain terms, it's not something he's speculating on, it's a fact that Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner Mueller, and his team used that black ledger that came from corrupt Ukrainian officials, used the black ledger, which was a fraud, to get 4 separate search warrants. And they knew on every single one of them that the information, the black ledger, was a fraud. They were told this by a high-level prosecutor in the Ukraine. And so I'm thinking back to when A.G. Barr was going through the hearings, and I remember how much emphasis he seemed to place. He used the term equal justice under the law on several occasions. I didn't count them, but it was more than 1 and 2 or 3. He kept referring to this, using this line, equal justice under the law. And of course, I've talked many times about why I have a certain amount of confidence in Barr, and it's just simply common sense. I don't think that A.G. Barr, a man who's quite wealthy, multimillionaire, would not come out of retirement to throw himself in the line of fire to do nothing more than warm the seat of the Attorney General for a couple of years before he retires again? And all he would really have done was sit there and taken a bunch of heat to produce nothing? No, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And if he wanted to make money, he'd go back to his old law firm. He was probably making more in a month than he makes in a year working for the government. So money was not the factor in bringing back Barr. Putting another feather in his cap certainly wasn't that. He was the Attorney General once before, and this certainly isn't going to help his career. He's only taking probably more heat. In fact, he'll probably hurt his reputation, at least while he's in the short term, and certainly among Democrats in taking the job. So, Barr using this phrase, equal justice under the law, I really believe that Barr sat back and he's sitting watching all this stuff and he knows what's going on. He sees the coup going on and he's like, isn't anybody going to stop this? What's going on? And maybe he just thought at some point, I'm going to have to step in here and I'm going to have to do something because nobody else appears to be interested or willing to have the courage to do the right thing here. And I just keep thinking back to those hearings when he repeatedly used the phrase equal justice under the law. And so that's why I stay pretty confident that we are going to get a positive resolution to this, and that the people who were acting in a criminal way, people engaged in criminal acts, of which there were many and many people doing that he is going to hold them accountable. Now, this kind of brings me back to the Mueller thing. So if A.G. Barr is serious about equal justice under the law, and he's looking at everything that's coming out, and we know that he's focusing to a certain extent on Ukraine, we know that they are looking at the Ukraine side of things. It's obviously you have things in Ukraine, the UK, Australia, Italy. There's a lot of foreign stuff going on here, and I know that Durham is looking into all that. But when you look at this thing with Mueller, I wonder at what point does A.G. Barr or Durham or both arrive at the situation where they have to look at each other and go, you know what? This Mueller thing, I think it was an extension of the original coup plot, and Mueller was part of it. And now we find out that he's absolutely was using evidence that he knew was fraudulent to get warrants. That is a crime. That's 4 separate crimes. He did it for 4 separate warrants. That's 4 separate crimes. So I just wonder, as we're going through this process, if Barr is really serious and means, in a literal sense, equal justice under the law, are we going to see a point where this investigation is going to turn not just to the typical conspirators that we talk about here every day, but he's actually going to have to start looking at Uncle Bob the executioner? and his team as having been part of the plot. And in fact, even if you don't tie them to the plot, just the simple fact that they knowingly used fraudulent information to get 4 search warrants. Those are individual crimes. And if Barr is a really equal justice under the law guy, it seems to me that he is not going to be able to walk away from that and not bring charges against Uncle Bob and anyone in his team who was a part of getting these search warrants based on what they knew was fraudulent information. And I just wonder when we're going to get to that point in the story where we actually see the target being placed on Mueller himself. And I think that's just one of these things we're just going to have to wait and see on. But I would not be the least bit surprised if at some point we find ourselves, in that situation. And to me, it seems slam dunk. If in fact Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, did in fact seek 4 search warrants based on information he knew was fraudulent, then he has to be charged with those crimes. So I'll be waiting and staying pretty much optimistic that Barr was serious when he said he's serious about equal justice under the law. We'll find out. We'll all find out together. Now, I want to direct your attention to a website which I don't frequent daily or even regularly, but I did stumble onto a very, very good, well-written story. It's too long, really, to go into here. There's one main point I want to focus on, but I do want to drop this out there as a site that, not a very common site, that some of you may want to check out. There's some really good articles there, not just the one I was reading, but some other good articles there as well. And I was never really familiar with this writer, but I looked into her a little bit, and she sounds pretty legit, has written some very good stuff. So you guys might want to check out a website called Liberty Unyielding, libertyunyielding.com. And there's a lot of good writers over there, some good stories. The one I was focusing on, read 2 or 3 of her stories, was a journalist writer named J.E. Dyer, D-Y-E-R. So Liberty Unyielding, J.E. Dyer. Now the specific story that I'm talking about that she wrote was titled The Heart of Russiagate. The Heart of Russiagate. And in fact, you may want to just Google J.E. Dyer, Liberty Unyielding, The Heart of Russiagate. Very, very good and well worth reading, to say in the least. It's very, very rich in content, you might say. And she does a very good job of tying together in a timeline sort of way all these events that played out. And hopefully over the next few days, we get a slow news day, I'll be able to go back and revisit that article and kind of format that into a timeline. And I can't go through, I wouldn't have time, obviously, to do it just in a video. But I think I can get a pretty good sort of overall view of what she's talking about in this article. But I just want to focus on one thing from it today, which is something that all of you who follow my videos know is near and dear to my heart because I believe it is a key in unraveling the plot. And that is something I've been talking about now for about a year and a half, and that is this secret task force that's described a lot of times as the multi-agency task force or the 6-agency task force. And then we've been hearing a new word to describe this special task force as this this new term that they're using, if I can think of it. Oh yeah, fusion something, fusion cell, I think is the word that they're using now. But when you read this article, you realize that there wasn't just one of these multi-agency task forces. Now, we first heard about this from an article written by Paul Wood early in the spring of 2017. In like, I guess it was April of 2017, Paul Wood, BBC, writes this article talking about John Brennan setting up this 6-agency or multi-agency task force somewhere between the late March of 2016 to early April 2016, somewhere in that 2-3 week period of time. Now, if you read through this article with J.E. Dyer and Liberty Unyielding, you see that this original, and this thing's a lot more in depth than even what I thought it was, because she really dives into this multi-agency task force. But what you realize as you go through this article, that the original task force is what originally produced this secret letter that we've all been hearing about that Brennan sent to the White House, which had, something for the president's eyes only or something. And in it, where it's being suspected that there was information that was from either the Steele or the Shearer dossier, however you want to, define those. I kind of think they're one and the same. But apparently this set off this fusion cell, or this other task force, which really came out of John Brennan's task force. So according to the story, Obama directed a secret task force, which is this fusion cell that they're referring to, on August the 6th of 2016, just before he headed to Martha's Vineyard for a vacation. And this was based on this secret letter, I guess, that he received from John Brennan. And so from that point forward, it looks like Obama took the multi-agency task force that John Brennan had set up back in late March, early April, and once information from that produced this supposedly secret information which Obama received, Obama acted on it by holding a meeting with Brennan and his other top national security people, and at that point he set up an even more secret, super secret task force which was being run right out of the White House, and Obama was running it. And they had these secret meetings, and they took a lot of extraordinary security precautions that they normally don't take. And the thing about it is it wasn't to look into Russian meddling or Russian election interference or anything like that. It was to investigate, and I'm using that term very lightly, investigate these Trump-Russia allegations coming from either Steele or Shearer or both. So now it's getting more and more clear that it wasn't just this multi-agency task force set up by Brennan. There's a lot more detail to it. I want to get into that in the next couple of days if I can find the time to do it, or you can just go read the article for yourself. But it's becoming more and more obvious why I've been hearing 2 or 3 different names and descriptions of this special task force. It's because it wasn't just one task force. It started out as the Brennan 6-agency task force, multi-agency task force, but it found its way or morphed its way into another, even more secret task force, which was being run by Obama out of the White House, and that began August the 6th of 2016. That's very early on. It's very early on. This would have been just about 2 to 3 weeks after the original Steele memo was given to Mike Gatta, the FBI agent in Rome. This is at a time when a lot of things were happening, and that's what this article, The Heart of Russiagate, is all about. It really focuses on that period of late spring of 2016 through the end of summer, this 5 or 6 month period of time where there's so many of these things were happening. And just, it's extraordinary when you look at all the things, whether it's on my timeline or whether you read the story, and you see how much activity, how many things were being put into motion to move this thing along. But probably the biggest revelation for me, and there's other things in the story that are monumental, but the biggest thing for me is this is finally clearing up my own personal confusion as I've been trying to dig into this multi-agency task force, why I'm hearing 2, 3 different names to describe it, and why I'm hearing various people being associated with it. And now it's perfectly clear to me what happened here is that there was really not just one of these task forces, there was several of them, and the key one that we're focusing on here being run by Obama out of the White House beginning August 6th of 2016. If there was ever any doubt about Obama's direct involvement in the coup plot, there should no longer be, because if what is written in this story turns out to be proven true, and it fits perfectly with everything that we know, and I do believe that this writer, J.E. Dyer, is definitely on to something here. And if this turns out to be true, then I cannot imagine how Hussein Obama is going to avoid being indicted, because this would not just be other people in his administration doing things that he wasn't aware of or not fully aware of or anything like that. This puts Barack Obama directly in the driver's seat of a special task force that was moving on the Shearer and the Steele, likely both of those, information. This would also upend Brennan big time because of the timeline. He says he didn't know about any of this stuff until much later. Of course, he would have had to have known about this at least at the very latest, early August. So this is a major bombshell if in fact it pans out to be true. And this is kind of where we hear Durham is kind of digging. He's digging into this secret group that was operating within the intelligence community, and that's probably where he's digging right now. And if this is all true, he'll probably discover this as well, that Obama was in fact a principal in running this specific operation, of which there were many operations going on. And it should also be duly noted that Peter's been stroking us was a member of both the original task force and this task force, being principled by Obama. Boom. That is some major mojo right there. The key to understanding how all these individual plots were all being organized, the central organizing force, because you have all these things going on in this 5-6 month period of time. Too many things going on all at the same time, which were working toward the same goal for these to all be just individual things happening. Individual things happening in the State Department, things happening with Fusion GPS, things happening here, things happening there. The idea that all these things were just happening on their own without any central coordination is just simply hard to believe. It's too coordinated. So that's why I've always said it's important to understand the role of the secret agency or multi-agency task force, because this is, this was the central, command center. This was the central command center that was putting all these things into motion, like many branches on a tree or something. This secret agency task force was like the main trunk of the tree, and all the other things that were happening were the branches coming off the tree. And this is why it's important to understand this, because it explains how all these things were going on and seemed to be coordinated. And it's because they were being centrally coordinated by a relatively small group of principals. And now we know the key principal, who everyone was reporting to and who was running in this and put this into motion, was Barack Hussein Obama. Hunter Biden. Man, this is a bad apple, my friends. This dude is a bad apple. Kicked out of the military for using cocaine. He's apparently a prostitution and drug addict. And now we learn that Hunter Biden is being accused of fathering a child with a woman in Arkansas while he was at the same time dating his dead brother's wife. So his brother, Beau Biden, dies, and as soon as his brother dies, Hunter Biden is in the sack with her. And you got to wonder if it was going on even before his brother died. Because, I mean, literally, he wasted no time hopping into the sack with his brother's wife. Now, that, I don't know how you could do that. I mean, that's baffling, how someone could do something like that. Your brother dies, and the next thing you know, you're jumping in the sack with his wife, his widow. That's just creepy, man. That's just creepy. And so there's a woman in Arkansas who her attorney is trying to make contact with Hunter Biden to let him know that she is going to be, they're going to be subpoena him, going to do a subpoena to him or whatever. He's going to have to go to court. They want him to take a paternity test to prove he is the father of her child. So he's at the same time that he's having this relationship with his recently deceased brother's wife, he's getting another woman in Arkansas pregnant. So it's been reported that he's a drug addict, and he's also apparently an addict for prostitutes. Now, this woman's attorney doesn't say that her profession is that she's a prostitute or anything like that. So I'm not accusing this woman of being a prostitute, but that's just something that's out there. But, and it's also, this guy is a sketchy character, man. I mean, he get kicked out of the military. The next thing you know, he finds himself everywhere his father goes. He finds himself on his father, who's the vice president, finds himself on his father's jet. Everywhere his father goes, he goes. And every time they leave a foreign country, the son, Hunter Biden, walks away with a multi-million-dollar business deal. And he's not even a businessman. He doesn't know anything about energy. Got kicked out of the military for being a cokehead. He's a pervert. I mean, this is just... If we had a media in this country which would honestly investigate these things, and I don't know if Barr has time to even get into this, but see, this is the type of thing, if you're Lindsey Graham, this is exactly the type of thing you should... This definitely warrants an investigation. Right here. And Lindsey Graham, this is exactly what he should be investigating right here. There's a lot going on here. And Lindsey Graham needs to get on it. I mean, he really does. So, I don't know, man, what's going on here, but this is, this is getting crazy, man. Man. When this thing is unraveled, I mean, we're not just talking about unraveling the Spygate thing or this Operation Hammer. I mean, we could be exposing corruption that's just even beyond our own imagination or ability to even grasp. I mean, that's the depth and breadth of corruption. It's so embedded into D.C. I mean, there's no end to it. And that's why you have to, I said, at some point, Barr and Durham have to make a decision where the cutoff point is for their investigation, or they'll be investigating for 100 years because everything leads to everything else and it never ends. At some point, you just got to, say, okay, this is the cutoff point. Okay, at this point, we're just going to investigate this. Okay, let's just focus on this. Let's work on this because there isn't time to investigate all the incredible corruption and crime associated with all these people. And it's all of them, man. It's all of them. Now we know why they had to stop Trump so bad. Jesus, man, this thing, the level of corruption, it's worse than any of us could ever imagine. And I have quite the imagination. Trust me. Okay, so we learned that this Democratic staffer, this Jackson Costco, and his associate, Samantha Davis, are now facing serious criminal prosecution. So Jackson Costco, this is the guy, the Democratic staffer who worked for this Congresswoman, Maggie Hassan. So this staffer, and I believe both of these two worked for Maggie Hassan. So Jackson Costco has admitted to doxing some high-ranking Republicans, senators, during the Kavanaugh hearings. We know for a fact McConnell, Lindsey Graham, and Rand Paul were all doxed by Jackson Costco. He's an arrogant, smug son of a bitch. Many of you remember him. He has pled guilty, and he is getting 4 years in prison. 4 years in prison. That's a pretty stiff sentence. They're going to make an example of him. And his assistant, this Samantha Davis, is facing 2 counts, and her hearing is scheduled here in the next couple of weeks. She's probably also going to receive prison time. And both of these were staffers for Maggie Hassan. They're the two who were involved in the doxing of these Republican senators during the Kavanaugh hearings. So, and Costco himself pled guilty to 5 felonies, and he's going to prison for 4 years. Wow, if he got 4 years for that, just think what Peter's been stroking us, James Comey, John Brennan, and the whole crew. Think what they're looking at. And by the way, Manafort should be immediately released. Manafort should be immediately released. Both of the documents that were used to go after Manafort, we now know were frauds. It's time for Attorney General Barr to order the immediate release of Paul Manafort. And he should immediately hire an attorney and go for civil action for damages. We have Trump telling Sean Hannity the other night on an interview that, I don't know how many of you caught this, but he said that the Department of Justice is looking into whether or not he, Donald Trump, was in fact spied on, meaning his phone conversations listened into. So we know about the FISAs on everybody else around him. We've heard about the national security letters. We believe that within the two hop roll, you certainly would have gotten at least people like Kushner and Manafort and Lewandowski and people like that. But Trump actually said to Hannity that the DOJ is looking into whether or not Trump himself had his calls listened in on and possibly unmasked. If they listened in on Trump and unmasked him, they better have a damn good reason for doing so, Susan Rice and Samantha Power. You better have a damn good reason for why you did that, if that turns out to be true. 2 more people that will likely go to jail, and very well should, if we're talking about equal justice under the law. And we're learning now that that third scope memo that we didn't even know about, Devin Nunes has now seen it, the third scope memo apparently was to target Michael Flynn Jr. The reason? Because they knew they had to shut Michael Flynn up, because he knew a lot of things. And they had been on him since 2014. And so I guess they figured that Michael Flynn's son maybe had been involved in some lobbying or something, possibly with the government of Turkey. And so they believed that the only way, that they knew they didn't have enough on Flynn to actually get him for a crime. So what they had to do is investigate his son, get search warrants or what have you, investigative warrants going on his son, so that they could pigeonhole him and then use that as leverage with Michael Flynn to get Michael Flynn to agree to a plea agreement, to agree to committing a crime, essentially. And that appears to be what this third scope memo may be about, is to get something on Mike Flynn Jr. in order to force Michael Flynn Sr. into the plea agreement. That is some dirty politics. That's some dirty stuff right there. That is big time dirty. And if Barr again discovers this to be true, and Rodenstein is the one who gave him that authority, and I don't think we've heard the last of Rodenstein either. Man, oh man, you just talk about how the dirty group of people, man. This is hard to believe, the things that they did. How in the world A.G. Barr and Durham could look at what the Mueller crew did, and Rodenstein giving them the authority to do that. How, if he can let them off the hook for this, I will have lost a lot of respect for A.G. Barr, because if he's interested in equal justice under the law and the rule of law, and you find out these things, man, this stuff is hard to walk away from. It's hard to walk away from this, man, because what these people have been put through, lives destroyed, and Trump nailed it. It was a witch hunt, man, nothing but. Straight up witch hunt. This is pretty funny. Of course, Hope Hicks was given 4 government lawyers and told not to answer any questions whatsoever about her tenure serving in the White House. So they had 7 hours of hearings, and apparently Jerry Nadler literally was blowing his shit. He was so pissed off because she would not answer any questions whatsoever about anything having to do with her job at the White House or anything else. And so they started asking her they spent several hours, then the Democrats, asking her all sorts of ridiculous questions, including about her sex life. And but the only questions that she would answer were questions about the weather and food. She would answer questions about weather and food. I don't think she commented much on her sex life, but she would not answer any questions whatsoever. And apparently Nadler was extremely frustrated. There's a real short clip of him coming out of the hearing. He's a strange looking dude, by the way, and he wears his pants. It's like he pulls his pants up here. I mean, his belt is like here, and he's got this big belly. And he pulls his pants up like this, and when he walks, he like waddles. I mean, this guy's a nut, man. The Penguin. We have this former Ukrainian prosecutor, who we all learned about several months ago, who Joe Biden ordered to be fired. Now he is publicly speaking up again, and he is named Viktor Shokin. So Mr. Shokin is now going public, pretty loudly, giving plenty of interviews. He wants to make sure his voice is heard in all of this. And he is saying that it is absolutely 100% true of the media reports that he was fired because of Joe Biden. It was Joe Biden that forced him out of his job. That is not just media hype, he says, is absolutely true. And he wants to tell his story. We also are learning that CrowdStrike co-owner Sean Henry was once the FBI's head of cybersecurity. We already knew that, of course. He used to be the head of FBI cybersecurity. What we probably didn't know, or some of you didn't know, is that he was actually promoted to FBI's head of cybersecurity by Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner. Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, was the guy who promoted the co-owner of CrowdStrike. It's one big happy family, isn't it? Is it not? It's like a mafia. It's a damn criminal mafia. It certainly is. Two of the Italian intelligence officials who were fired were regular lecturers at Link campus in Rome and had very close ties to Mr. Scotti. Mr. Scotti is the guy who came up to Papadopoulos at Link University and said, "Hey, let me introduce you to my good friend, Joseph Mifsud." Mifsud. Let me say that again. Mifsud. Is that okay, Douglas? Well, we have Kirsten Gillibrand on a radio program the other day being interviewed, and she says with a straight face, and she's serious too. Now you're gonna love this one. She says that there should not be any pro-life judges, and that pro-life judges should just be removed from the court, and that if you're a pro-life, you should not even be allowed to be considered for a court position. And I assume she means Supreme Court. So Gillibrand doesn't believe that if you are pro-life, you should even be able to serve as a judge, especially on the Supreme Court. Now, that is beyond troubling right there. That is just, wow. No wonder she's sitting at 0%. Not even Democrats can swallow that one. That's just, that's just, man, that tells you how sick these people are. These are sick people, man. I'm telling you. This is beyond just bad politics or wrong on the issue or whatever. I mean, these are some people with some real sickness in their minds. How they got it, I don't know. We're also learning that during the 8 years of Obama, that the person who was really his point man and who was given pretty much the job of overseeing affairs in Ukraine, the person who was essentially the point man and running the show for Obama in Ukraine was crazy Uncle Joe Biden. Joe Biden was Obama's point man for Ukraine. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, man, there's a lot to dig into there, is there not? I mean, you could have 100 prosecutors and investigators and spend 5 years just digging into Biden's activities in Ukraine alone, let alone this massive conspiracy that's just, it's literally overwhelming. I mean, I don't know how you wrap your arms around something this massive. That's why I said Barr and Durham are just going to have to at some point listen, here's our parameters. Yeah, we can investigate shit. We could be doing this for 100 years. Let's just work on this from this point to this point, and everything else has to fall out later. You got to draw the line somewhere. This is what a massive conspiracy this is. Alrighty, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. Be sure and check out that article. See you guys. Bye.